Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. Okay, it got me a little hiccup there for a moment. Anyway, this is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. First and foremost, as always, I want to thank all of you who joined this video, those who may be watching with me as I go live, those who may come in later and watch this video. Really want to say that I thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and be live with me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We are still, thank you, Sister Antoinette. We are still talking about singleness. Today is May 4th, 2024. We're still talking about singleness and in the sense of becoming our whole authentic self singularly. And today we're talking about post-traumatic growth. And I want to tell you just a little bit about emotional maturity, because we will have a guest coming on sometimes in the end of May, probably June. And I should have had this up, but I didn't know I was going to tell you about her today. But anyway, her name is Leslie Rutland. And the reason Leslie is going to come on and talk to us, a few things about Leslie. Leslie is one of the most confident people I know. She's empowered, so she empowers others. She has a very extensive resume. And one of the things I like about Leslie, her resume did not make her. And I think that you'll be able to get a sense of that too when she comes on and talk to us. She's going to come and talk to us about being emotionally mature. I think she's one of the most emotionally mature women that I know. But she's our senior vice president of business banking treasury. She's the United States and international head of workplace experience technology for BMO. And there's so many other things that she does and so many things that she brings. When she walks into a room, she commands the room. And I think that this lady has maturity down to a place where I really like seeing it. And I think that she can bring so much to this group, to us rather. So I'm hoping that when she comes on, I'm going to let you know when. It'll probably be, like I said, the end of May or maybe early June. But I'll let you know, when her schedule allows her to come and join us. So again, this is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Last week we started to talk about post-traumatic growth. And we said on last week, we can't undo the trauma that has happened in our lives. And so many times, we don't want it. If we could undo it, we would definitely undo it. But we can't undo the trauma that has happened in our lives. What we can do is we can grow bigger than that experience. And that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about post-traumatic growth, we're talking about how we can grow bigger than an experience. Last week we had the three glasses, and we had a small glass, a next size, and a bigger glass. And we put this item inside the glass, one item that was the same size in each glass. And so oftentimes we talked about how people want us to get over the trauma. It's been years. Why are you still talking about that? Why are you still dealing with that? Because everyone's experience with trauma and recovery is unique to that person. There's no set timeline, or there's no set time that a person should be healed. And unless a person understands it, trauma can change even the person who's dealing with the trauma. It can change that person to the extent that they no longer even know themselves. And they don't know how to find their way in life. So you're saying to them and you're holding them and wanting them to get over it when it's not that easy for people who are dealing with trauma and trauma triggers, especially when we don't have the tools needed for post-traumatic, to grow after post-traumatically. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about how to grow post-traumatically. Thank you for viewing. Hey, Donata, good morning. Glad to see you on the line. Thank you so much. She said, good morning, I'm here. Thank you so much. Anyway, so we talked a little bit about education, and we're going to talk more about education today. We're going to talk about education and the 5 phases of post-traumatic growth. As I said, we don't just get over it. Sometimes it's not that easy to just get over it. So the 5 phases are: we educate, regulate, disclose, story, and service. Now, I like that, and it didn't seem right when I said, okay, I understand that educate may be a phase, Regulate, I could understand that may be a phase, and some type of disclosure could be a phase. But stir it and service kind of threw me all together. But those are the 5 phases, so we'll talk about those right now. Uh, so the 5 phases represent the process that we need to undertake on the road to growing, to post-traumatic growth. They include grieving what we lost and rebuilding our core beliefs. We talked about it. It's kind of like the stages of healing. You remember the person you were before they hurt you, the person you were before you felt disrespected, the person you were, before things start happening that hurt you. That's what we're trying to get back to that person. Erica White, thank you so much for joining. It's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. So that's what we're talking about. Post-traumatic growth is a process that helps us to grow in the midst of still having trauma inside of us and the traumatic things in our lives and the things that we don't forget about them. And I don't know if we even supposed to forget about it, but we're not. What we're going to do, we talk about managing those things. So that's what we're talking about. As I said, we can't undo it. Education, we know, is power. We educate ourselves on 2 things. The first thing we educate ourselves on is understanding that the power that the struggle or trauma has on our thoughts. Once we understand, that's why we started these, when we first started these conversations, we started talking about understanding, first of all, who we are, whose we are. Then we went on to talk about, about understanding what a trauma. We want to know what trauma is, and we want to understand what a trauma trigger is and how the trauma triggers can affect us. So all of those things are really, really important. Anytime we're trying to deal with anything, we need to understand it. Even before your doctor can help you with anything that's going on in you physically, they need to understand it. So a lot of times they ask you questions. How do you feel? And ask you questions about your family history, because all these things can play a big part on what we're doing. So education is really, really important. Education is power. So we educate ourselves on understanding that how much this trauma has on our thoughts, how much it has on our feelings, how much it even has on our belief. It can affect us so deeply, because belief is really a deep thing, but sometimes trauma can affect that too. We educate ourselves so that we have tools to draw upon. If we don't have education, if we don't understand a thing, we don't have the tools needed to draw upon when those symptoms come upon us. Eric, I told you last week that Eric Adams, who's the state senator, said if we don't educate, he was talking about the prison system when he said that if we don't educate, we incarcerate. But it's true too. It's true in our trauma, in our traumatic experiences. If we don't educate ourselves and understand the trauma and understand the triggers and the things that we are going through, we will incarcerate ourselves. We will imprison our own self, because that's what trauma does. When that trauma comes upon us, if it doesn't go away, it imprisons us. It takes us sometimes where we used to laugh a lot, and now we've been hurt and we don't laugh anymore. As people come and say, well, you don't act like you used to act, because something traumatic has hindered me from being that carefree, lively, whatever person that I was before. Our days and our talks are trying to break those cycles. We want to go back to being the whole authentic self that we were created to be, with a life that's full of life. God said in the Word, He said He came that we could have abundant life. We want an abundant life. We deserve abundant life. We deserve to be happy. We do, and we're going to break those cycles, those things that hold us, imprison us, and got us in a place where we can't even enjoy life. No, we won't have it. We just won't accept it. So that's what we're doing. We're working to build ourselves. We're going back to the core DNA of who we really are. Okay. Another thing that we want to say, education, according to Nelson Mandela, said that education is the most powerful weapon in which we can use to change the world. It's also the most powerful weapon that we can use to change ourselves. Education is vital to anything that we want to do. If we go off trying to fix something without knowing how, we can cause a lot of damage. I said this a while back, and I want to say this again because it comes to mind again. If my parent, if I don't like, and then we find this a lot now, if my parents raised me a certain way, the way that they raised me, I don't like the way my parents raised me. So I'm going to go back when I have children. I'm going to raise them differently from my parents. So the thing to think about and to know is my parents raised me with the tools that they had. with the knowledge that they had. So they raised me with the know-how that they had. So my mom, let's say my example was that she's trying to fix the water leak in the kitchen under the sink. And she only has a hammer. So she goes in with the hammer and she tries to fix that pipe. She can cause more water damage. But I'm going to do it different because I don't like the way my mom did. But if I have the same tools and no different tools I don't have anything different from what my mom had, I can cause even more damage than my mom did. I can break the pipe. I can go in there and keep hammering because I'm going to do it different from my mom. I can break the wall. I can knock over some things in the sink and have a great big spill. There's so much without education that we can hurt ourselves. So that's why we took the time when we first started to first understand ourselves. We want to know what overwhelms us. We want to pay attention to ourselves, to our emotions, to what we feel, to what we do. You know, what we're thinking. That's really important because our thinking is going to affect how we feel. And then how we feel is going to affect what we do. So it's really, really important that we do that. The second thing is to learn about the possibility of growth. Even though trauma affects us, even though it can be powerful over us, until we learn to manage it, it has power over us. There's a possibility to grow in the aftermath of the trauma. We don't have to stay in the same thinking environment. We can break the cycle, as Eric Adams said. We can break that cycle of thinking. We can break that cycle of flying off the handle every time something come up that kind of bring back one of those trauma triggers. Because one thing we can do, we can bring ourselves into the now and understand that, okay, this is happening today. I'm beginning to feel the same way I felt when that previous trauma thing happened, but this is not that previous trauma thing. This is a brand new thing. This is today. Bring myself into the now and deal with the one thing instead of trying to making them a bigger and bigger. Sometimes when we don't deal with things and the trauma triggers come, it seems like the ball get bigger and bigger. So that's the way that that's one of the things we can understand, that there is a possibility of growth. We can grow around it. I used for an example last week about leprosy. And sometimes when the leprosy can affect the peripheral nervous system, and what it does, it causes people not to be able to register pain. So, an example, when we're not able to register this stuff and how it's affecting us, it can cause more damage in us. Just like in the person who has leprosy and can't register pain, and they break their toe and they can't register that's the pain of the broken toe, and they keep walking on it. Now they messed up their foot, and then they keep on and messed up their ankle. We keep on, unless we deal with that one thing when it was a smaller thing, and we don't understand it, don't deal with it, don't manage it, it can grow and become bigger. You'll hear a lot of time people say things like, all men are bad, all women are bad, and that's because of the relationship they had with 2-3 people, whatever, 1-2 people in their lives. Everybody's not bad. Our men are not bad. Our women are not bad. Because in order for us to say that, we are actually including ourselves, whether we want to or not. We think all women are bad, but not us. All men are bad, but not us. And another thing, too, that I'm going to bring up, sometimes we see people in relationships, and especially when we want to be in a relationship, we want to be married, we want these people in our lives. And we thinking we got this mind of who we really are, what we got and what we offer. And then we see this guy, this girl with somebody that's totally different from what we think is the ideal person. You see I hope you see where I'm going. So, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later because I do have an example, but a little bit later. But anyway, when the leprosy, if we don't manage this part of it, we'll go back and hurt even more. So pain itself is not actually the problem in leprosy. So they can't register pain. Their peripheral nervous system has been damaged, so they don't register pain. They don't realize that I got this traumatic thing in my life. I don't realize how it's affecting me. So the actual trauma thing is not the problem. The trauma trigger, the trauma thing that happened, it was wrong. It does not excuse that it was wrong. It was hurtful, but it's really not the problem as we grow. The problem becomes our unwillingness to validate that pain, to validate that trauma, and the fear of facing it. So we don't want to, we get to those places we talked about before where we want to hide it because we don't want anybody to look at us a certain way, and we don't want anybody to know we went through this thing, and we don't want anybody to, we're living in this imaginary world where we're trying to get people to see one thing in us. But inside we got all this other stuff that's going on, and it's hurting us. So we can't undo trauma. We cannot. Just remember that we can't undo it, but we can become bigger than the trauma. And one of those things that we do to become bigger is we educate ourselves. Okay? Education is the first phase. The second phase is to regulate. And this is the ability to manage extreme emotions, whether they are positive or negative. We want to manage our extreme emotions, our extreme sensation, our extreme thoughts. We want to manage those. We want to pay attention to when I'm thinking something, when my thoughts are negative. That's a big one. When our thoughts are negative, we want to manage that. We want to manage what we are saying. We want to manage how we are feeling. And the only way we're going to manage what we are feeling, we got to manage what we're thinking. I told you last week that according to the National Science Foundation, we have a default setting of negative. Our default setting is negative. 80% of our daily thoughts are negative. As we know, our thoughts control our feelings. Our feelings gonna control what we do, our actions. So this starts with managing those negative emotions. We got to manage those negative emotions like anxiety, guilt, anger. This can be done by shifting that kind of thinking that leads to those feelings. So the only way you're going to manage those emotions is to manage how you feel. So one of the things that I see a lot, that I see a lot on Facebook sometimes when I'm scrolling through, and I see a lot, and all those comments about they hating on you, and they out to get you, and they're your enemy, and your family can be your worst. Those comments and stuff. If you start to having those type of thoughts, and you let those thoughts build up in you, you're gonna feel like it. When your brother, sister, uncle, aunt, mom, dad say something to you, your feeling is gonna go right to those thoughts that you already have, that they don't like you. Instead of thinking, your mind saying to you, no, I don't want you to go to a younger person. No, I don't want you going over here because it's dangerous. Your mind is, she just don't want me to have fun. Your mind will take you some places that you don't want to go. And it's because of the thoughts that we allow in our lives. We're not managing our thoughts. And we want to make sure that we look at that we change that default setting. That's where Eric was talking about when he said we got to break the cycle. We got to change the default setting, and that takes work. Sometimes we don't want to work. We just want things to flow by themselves. But sometimes it's gonna actually take work for it to happen. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention. Leanne is on. Thank you so much, Leanne, for joining. Hey, Dr. Whitehead, I appreciate you joining. Dr. Whitehead is on today. Thank you so much, all of you who joined today. So we want to shift our thinking. I told you, okay, here's one thing. Instead of focusing on our losses, on our failures, on uncertainties, on worst case scenarios, we want to try and recall successes. We want to consider some best case possibilities. We want to reflect on our own resources and preparation and think reasonably about what we can do. What can I do when I start to think? You remember last week, I was telling you that I don't remember any good in my childhood. And it would have been nice to be able to laugh about, my brothers and sisters, we did this, and we used to do that, and we used to do that. But some of the good things, because of the trauma, I allowed myself for so long to see the trauma and to focus, to allow my default setting to be at probably more than 80%, until I was unable to see anything positive that happened in my childhood. It was really bad. And a lot of times, like now, I can't tell you what my brothers and sisters did that was laughing and fun. I don't remember those things. But I always apply what I bring to you here to my own life. I try not to bring anything on here that I'm not applying in my own life, because this is really my growth as well. So I'm applying it to my life. So I applied shifting my thinking. I want to shift my thinking. Still, I don't recall the fun times. I can't say I do. Still, they were not there. Still, it took something from me. Yes, it did. I can admit that. But I started actively, purposely trying to find some things in my childhood that were not bad. Then I started to remember when my mom used to tell us jokes. She was a jokester. She used to always tell us jokes. I remember her used to brushing my hair and wrapping it with all those different colored ribbons. I remember my brother teaching me a poem. I forgot all of these things. My brother taught me a poem. His name was Lavelle, and we called him Lucky. And I even remembered the poem. actively start to look for something good in my childhood, something that I could, when my mind come and say, that my entire childhood was lost, when my mind and my thinking go that way, I now have some things that I can make myself change my thinking and go back and find. I want to tell you this poem. It's not a long one, and I think it's a real cool one. And my brother taught it to me, and I remembered it. And it says, if Jesus came to your house to spend a day or two, if he came unexpected, I wonder what you would do. I know you would give your nicest room to such an honored guest, and you would keep assuring him that you're glad to have him there. That serving him in your home is joy beyond compare. But when you saw him coming, could you meet him at the door with your arms outstretched to welcome your heavenly visitor? Or would you have to change your clothes before you let him in? Or hide some magazines and put the Bible where they had been? Would you turn off the radio and wish he had not heard, or wish you had not uttered that last loud, hasty word? Would you take him with you everywhere you planned to go? Or would you set your plans out for just a day or so? Would you have Jesus meet your very closest friends? Or would you hope that they stay away until his visit ends? And he would say, and it may be interesting to know the things you would do if Jesus came in person to spend some time with you. So this week, I kept thinking about that. This week, I kept remembering little things like that meant so much to me. I'm not saying at all that those things that I remember took away the fact that other things were forgotten. I'm not saying at all. I share with you my story. I'm not saying to you at all that they take away the fact that I don't remember the fun in my childhood. Because some of the things that I learned that poem, I'm glad I remember it, because it gives me something else to focus on. It gives me something else to smile about. And as I began to look and think about it even more, I remember that when we were little kids, now this didn't seem like fun at the time, but it's helpful now. It's really a blessing now. When my mom used to make us, before we ate, we had to quote a scripture. And my favorite scripture, hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that's higher than me. For you have been a shelter and a strong tower from my enemy. So to say those things in the midst of all that stuff that was happening down south, then many other afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers us out of them all. That kind of stuff, even though I didn't understand it, that was what part of, may have been what was keeping me, but it was something good. There was some good happening in my life when I didn't even understand that good was happening. What he said in John, he said, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. He said, in this Father's house of many mansions. So we living in this shotgun house, in my Father's house of many mansions. If it wasn't so, he wouldn't have told me. And he go to prepare a place for us. And he said he's going to come again and receive us. Because where he is, he said we can be there. And I felt like Thomas said, Lord, I don't even know where you're going. How can I know the way? But this is my favorite all-time, one of my favorite all-time scriptures. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That scripture stays with me even today, because I now live my life where I don't wait for God to quote unquote make a way. My way is already made. So I apply that this way in my life, that when Jesus Christ died on the cross, and when he said it's finished, it was finished for whatever I need from the rest of my life. And that's my application of it. Isaiah 43. Now, even as I go through things, I have a son. I have a son that's in prison. And he said to us, he said in Isaiah 43, he said, now thus saith the Lord that created thee, he that formed thee, O Israel. He said, don't be afraid. I've already redeemed you. I bought you back. You're called by my name. You belong to me. So all of that stuff, he said that when I go through the fire, you're not going to be burned. And he said, even for our children, he said, fear not. I'm with you. I will bring your seed from the east, and he's going to gather them from the west. I can say to the north to give up my kids. I can tell the south, don't even try to hold back. Bring my daughters and my sons from the end of the earth. So those are the things that I use. Those are the things. No, I don't remember running around the house with my sister, and I'm not trying to take away from that would have been so cool to remember. And I'm not even going to say that this is a better memory, but it's a worthwhile memory. I love it. I thank God that that's what he gave me. I didn't have the other, but I thank God that I have this. When we regulate, we acknowledge that circumstances continue to be challenging and they continue to be frightening. And then we demonstrate self-control under that pressure. When we can acknowledge, and it's so important to acknowledge, even if it's just to ourselves, when we're frightened, when we feel that something is challenging, it's important that we acknowledge it. But then that doesn't mean that we're not demonstrating self-control. We demonstrate self-control. That's what we do. We just because we don't like something, we're not gonna go on Thursday night. My pastor was telling how a situation came upon him and he didn't like it. And that's one of the things I love about my church too, that he don't act like that. My pastor's not saying, and I just prayed and everything was okay. Sometimes I don't be praying. And I can admire and respect someone that can be open and honest that way to say, and I felt this way. But you exercise self-control. Sometimes things are going to come up on us, especially those things that are trauma triggers, and self-control is not what we want to exercise. But we do. We understand it, we acknowledge it, and we exercise self-control. Okay? If we can't find healthy ways to regulate, we will medicate. Okay? If we don't find healthy ways to regulate, we will medicate. And when I say medicate, I'm not talking about I'm not saying that we're going to start taking medication. That's not what I mean. I also mean that if we don't find healthy ways to regulate, then we're going to find other ways to address it. We're going to find other ways to try to fix it. We're going to try other ways to try to numb the pain. We're going to find other ways to try and treat it. And I said before, sometimes we go and just spend all our money just buying stuff. Just buying stuff. Sometimes we buy, 100 pair of shoes. I'm not saying that this is not for Rose to tell you what to buy. You do whatever you feel like because this is your life. But sometimes we need to understand why we do it. Let me tell you what I do. I always got a taste for something that I don't have in the house. I get a taste for it because I don't have it. See, that's a trauma trigger because a lot of times as a kid we didn't have. So as an adult, if I get a taste for things we don't have. I get a taste for ice cream. I don't have any ice cream. I want whatever I don't have in the house is what I want. So I go to the store and buy ice cream, and that ice cream be sitting in the freezer. I want some Long Boys. Danetta can tell you that. I want some Long Boys. I went and ordered a box of Long Boys offline and bought another box of Long Boys. I think I ordered 2 of them. And Long Boys over there now, I'm thinking about how am I going to give them away. That's what happens. We end up when I didn't have food as a kid, when we didn't have food, a lot of food as a kid, then I go and stacked up and I had so much stuff in my pantry until food was expiring. So I'm not saying don't do the things you want to do. I'm just saying to take a look at them and understand why you're doing them. And if it's a trauma trigger and it's hurting you in some type of way, then I threw away money. I'm asking God to bless my finances, but the food that I threw away money. He was blessing my finances and I threw it away. I bought stuff that I really didn't need. I didn't think things through to see do you really want some ice cream? So now I try not to, when I moved here, I got rid of a lot of stuff out of my house and I try not to have anything that I don't really, really want. Because I know that those are triggers in me. I understand now. Aristotle said that if we educate our mind, if we get all this education and we don't apply it, then it's not even education. We want to apply what we're learning. We want to. It won't make sense to me to go and learn this stuff, to research and not try to get better. That's the whole purpose of this for me. Regulation cultivates calm. We will be able to be more calm. It cultivates clarity and correctness. I'm learning to correct now things like that. I'm learning now not to just buy a cabinet full of stuff that I don't even use. I even bought some Indian seasoning stuff that I didn't even know how to cook. So the stuff expired. Once we understand the power of regulation, we can begin to disclose our traumatic experiences and their impact. So those things that are locked inside of us, once we begin and understand the power of what it means to regulate, then we can disclose them. See, until I understand how to regulate my emotions, I don't want to try and disclose what you did to me made me feel, because I won't come at you the right way. I won't come at you and say it in a way that I would want you to say it to me. So we need to regulate before we try to disclose. And when we talk about disclose, I'm going to talk about it in the sense of trauma, but I also want to say, and I'll say this again, one size does not fit all. When it comes to disclosure, we really have to be mindful, and that's why I always recommend therapy. Everybody, no one else rather, is Rosie. I open my mouth and I share things because that's my way of healing. That's what I need to do. That may not be what you need to do. You need to make sure that what you do is what you need to do for your life to be exactly what you want it to be. So the first phase we talked about was educate. We talked about regulate. And this phase is called disclosure. It means to reveal, to expose information that was previously kept a secret. and sometimes it's exposing and revealing it even to ourselves, because sometimes when traumatic things happen, we kind of bury them sometime in our subconscious. We talked about fragmentation, how we have parts of it that we put over here somewhere inside of us, and it's not a bad thing. It's so that we can deal with what's happening. So it's just the way that the system works. Well, some of the stuff is like not even thought about, because we need to be okay and we need to be able to move forward. But when we get to the point of disclosure, it's to reveal and expose that stuff. Excuse me, to expose this stuff. Maya Angelou said that there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. There's no greater agony. So when we talk about the story, we talk about the evolution of the first-hand account. There's no greater agony than bearing what you went through inside of you. There's no greater agony, because what you went through, and we can go through the same thing, and it can affect us differently. But if it's an agony for me, that I'm bearing this thing inside of me, it's an agony for me, and I need to disclose it. Okay, this step involves talking about this traumatic experience and talking about the ways that it affected us. That's one of the things that I try to do in the book. Not only to talk about what happened, but to talk about the ways that it affected me. Because oftentimes, we've heard people say how, they did this to me, but they don't tell us a lot of time how it affected them. And the effect is just as important, even more important than what they did. Because what they did or said could have been just one thing, but the things that affected me went on for so many years. Describing the experience to somebody else, or even to yourselves and to our therapists, and telling them how we are struggling with it, both in the past and the present, can help to reflect on it and help us to process it. We want to be in touch with our feelings and true to what we feel. So many times we have been taught, even as a kid, not to be true to what we feel. You fall down, you hurt yourself, or the kids are bullying you and it's really bothering you, and your parents are telling you it's okay. Words can't hurt. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Words can hurt. The purpose of us expressing our emotions is to convey our true feeling and to be open and honest. We're not trying to embarrass anybody else. When I wrote the book, A Thornless Rose, I didn't use anybody. I tried to be very mindful and careful not to use people's names. Only names I used were my family, my mom and dad, people in my life, and I tried to do it that way. I even tried to make sure that I didn't tell my children's story. My kids could tell their own story if they decided to do so. But I tried to make sure that I stuck to my story. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. We're not here to blast anybody else. What we're here to do is to be whole in ourselves. It's all about being whole. So I could come and tell you how the world was and why they so wrong and what Johnny did and what Mary did, but that's not as important as me being whole. Depressing thoughts can distort our way of thinking, which makes it hard for us to see the world correctly during these times. If I spend my day thinking about the traumatic things that happen, all the bad things that happen, I fail to see the beauty of the sun coming up. I fail to see the beauty of the flowers blooming. I fail to see the beauty of the people walking in the trees and there's so many things over here to see that I will fail to see them if I focus on the bad, if I focus on the trauma. The truth is, if we let those tears flow, those trauma tears flow, we're letting out the hurt and making room for in our heart for more positive thoughts and feelings. Expressing our pain is actually a good way to make it stop. It's a very good way to make it stop. I told you, excuse me, when I first started to do my own hair, I was learning to crochet and I didn't know how to do it. So I crocheted my hair, and I was losing hair, pieces of hair everywhere. So I went to work that day, and I was a manager over this team, and I went to work that day, and I knew I was losing hair. And I told him, I said, okay, guys, you see I got a new hairstyle. I said, but I didn't know what I was doing, so I'm losing pieces of hair. If you find my hair, please put it on my desk. And they laughed. It was a little chuckle. But it wasn't the same laughter as it would have been if I had not said nothing. And they found hair. Oh, look, Rosie's hair. I took all of that away. I expressed that pain. I expressed that trauma. I expressed that thing. And I made it stop. Sometimes things are not stopping because we are not expressing the pain. So it's going on and on. We're hiding the pain. Okay. One size, when I say about disclosure, does not fit all. You don't want to go saying things, exposing stuff and saying stuff, disclosing stuff about your life that is not ready to be disclosed. Everybody's not ready to go and say that my father abused me. Everybody's not ready to go tell the world that dad used to shoot at my mom, pushed her into a closet and shot holes through the door. Everybody's not ready to say that they didn't even know I was trying to protect my kids and I didn't even know how, because I didn't even know how to protect myself. Everybody is not ready to say that, because when you do say it, when you open yourself, when you open your mouth, you also open your heart. So when you open your mouth and speak these things, and when people come back, if they're not coming back with things you want to hear, that stuff can be hurtful. And if you're not ready and in that place where you should be, it's going to hurt you. So when you get ready to disclose, make sure you know that one size does not fit all. By doing this hard work of education, it's hard work. It's not easy to understand this stuff. The hard work of regulating our feelings and our emotions and managing them. And disclosure, then we can begin to pick up the pieces. Once we can regulate this stuff, we begin to when we bring our fragmented parts together, we can begin to build anew. We can build upon the stories of our lives. See, because that's what the fragments are. We're bringing back the good, the bad, and the ugly, because all of that is what makes me. I'm not just one part of that. I am all of that. So I bring back the fact that I was hurt, embarrassed, disrespected, and the love and the joy that I lost and I still have. And I bring all of that back in my life. And then I can begin to build upon the story of my life and write new chapters. When I told you when I felt that I was at the edge of that cliff and I had nowhere else to go, I couldn't go forward, but I had to turn back and go back into the hurt, back into the disrespect, back into the pain that I felt. When we go back, we can begin to build. We don't want to go back. We don't want to deal with those pain. We don't want to deal with that hurt. But that's the only way to get to phase 4, which is story. We have to, once we go back and face it, yeah, this happened, and get to a point where it becomes just a scar. It's a scar, but it's not painful when you touch it. That's why I can talk about it. It's not painful. So whatever anybody say, when I tell my story, it's not painful. It's okay if they don't agree with me telling my story. It's okay that they think I shouldn't have said that I'm putting my business in the street. It's okay. But because my motto, and I have to be whole. I have no choice. I have to be. So my motto and my thinking is this: if Jesus Christ knows, by all means, it's okay if you know. So the next phase is story, which is that next chapter. There's a sequence of how we do this. Have you ever came into, if you try to get out of sequence, it's kind of like coming into the room and a movie's playing and it's in the middle of and you look at the television and it's in the middle and a lot's going on and you don't know at the beginning. That's the way it is when you're out of sequence. So the first thing you're going to ask is, what's this movie about? It looks like a good movie. It looks like something I want to know, but I don't know what it's about. I'm lost. That's the way it is when we try to do things out of sequence. When we try to go from, we're not managing our emotions, but we're trying to be a different way. Maybe because people said we should be a different way, whatever it is. We want to have relationships, and this is Antoinette. We want to be married. But it's also important to know what that person is about. That's our story. What we are about is our story. We get married oftentimes, too many times. We get into marriages, we get into relationships with people just to find out later that they don't want what we want and they're not about what we're about. We want to be authentic and we want to know our worth. When we are authentic, when we can share, this is what I'm about. See, you're looking for, you meet this person, and I also think that it has something to do with being equally yoked. We think that, and we have, I ain't going to say you think it, but we've been saying a lot of time that being equally yoked, I thought it meant that we both go to church. Not necessarily. You can have two people in the church, two people in your family, and we're not about the same thing. We're not equally yoked. We're not about, both of us about saving. We're both about this. We're both about paying off our debt. We're both about having something. We're both about going to church. We're both about serving the Lord. That's the stuff, the things that are important. My pastor said you better talk to him, and it's a good idea to have those conversations. We can't have a true, authentic relationship, and no one can have one with me unless you know me. There's a saying that says, I was talking to a person, a person who was wondering if they had said something that, done something to me in my past. And that's really not what it's about. We're not here to blast anybody. I'm here for my self-care. But they were saying, well, I treat people the way I want to be treated. And I know where we get that from. We get that from that scripture said we do unto others and you would have them do unto you. That we take and say we treat people the way they want to be treated. But that's not what it means. When we say to do unto others as we would have them do unto me, I desire the same for you as I would desire for me. Now I told you when my son got shot and my daughter-in-law shot my son, what I have to desire for her is the same thing that I would desire for me if I had shot somebody. I don't want the world to hate me. I want to be forgiven. I want to get better. I don't want to spend my life in jail. So my prayer for her has to be the same as if it was me. No matter what I think, no matter who I think is wrong, I got to get all that stuff and change my thinking so that I can do the right thing. So I was saying to this lady that said I treat others the way I want to be treated. I think it's a better idea personally if you treat me the way I want to be treated and let me treat you the way you want to be treated. And the only way to do that is if you know my story. Because if you know my story, you know I don't like whatnots. I really don't want a lot of anything. So I tell my friends who care, enough to buy me something. I said, buy me a candle and don't buy me a lot of those. I had so much stuff in that house. I want to live more simple, and that's just me. And now you tell me what you like, and we can do what you like. When I was married, I thought that I knew what a wife should do. And I was doing stuff, and when my husband wasn't working, I was trying to make sure if I had money, we both had money, and he had the card, and if he said he wanted something, I didn't want him to feel bad because he wasn't working. I was doing stuff, and we went to counseling, and he said, you think you're my mama. He said, every time I say I want something, you go do it. That's because I didn't know him, what he was about, and he didn't know what I was about. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm doing something good. In his mind, you're not letting me do what I need to do on my own. I'm a man. That's why it's important that we know each other. James Baldwin, who's the acclaimed actor, and the civil rights advocate, said these words. He said, for while the tale of how we suffer and how we are delighted and how we may triumph is never new, it always must be heard. For the tale of how we suffer and how we are delighted and how we may triumph is never new. It always must be heard. There isn't any other tale to tell. No other tale. It's the only light we got in all of this darkness. The story of my life, the story of our lives, the story of our families, our story, my story of suffering, my story of delights, my story of triumph. It's not a new one. Many people have the same story. It's not common. It's common. Many families down south my parents had 16 kids. They did too. A lot of us lived in shotgun houses. We understood what it means to lack. Many of us were abused. We work from sun up to sundown. My story is common. It's not something that nobody's heard before, but it always still must be heard. My story deserves to be told because no one else experienced it like I did. It deserves to be heard so that others know that they can live a wonderful life on life terms and to understand what truly matters. My story is going to help somebody to understand that new possibilities can emerge from struggles because I'm an example of that. What you've gone through, your story, will help somebody understand the possibilities of the different things that you emerge from. We can have a deeper relationship and understand of people who suffer, whom we've gone through. Because my story tells of a personal strength. When we go through that stuff, and we know that even though I went through that, I lived through that, I can face anything. There's very little now that you can't tell, make me feel that I can't do because of how much God has done and allowed me to do. My story has given me a greater appreciation for life because when I was younger and when I felt like I wasn't being heard, when I felt like, and I know that, I think that was Minister Vicky said that too, that she sometimes feel like people not disrespecting when she's trying to say something. I felt like I wasn't being heard. So now I listen to even the little kids. I don't have a certain person that I would listen to because I'm trying now to hear. I have a greater appreciation. Good morning, Pat. And my sister, thank you for joining. Yeah, I have a greater appreciation for life. I don't take anything for granted. It was my grandbaby that told me, if you want a car, you should go get it. And I didn't even have a job. But the car was supposed to be mine. I went and got the car. Whatever, it taught me that I'm not the only one that have something to say. Because I used to fix everything. I knew the answer to everything. But I'm not the only one that has something to say. Okay? So, Baldwin also said that there is no other tale to tell. Our story is the only tale that we can tell. Everything else is an imaginary world. It's the only light that we have in this darkness. Master, we don't decide when there's light, we don't decide really how far the flashlight can go. We shine it under a chair and it illuminates in other areas surrounding the chair when the only thing I needed to do was look under the chair. That's the way it is. So when our story illuminates, when it goes out there, it deserves to be allowed to form any way it chooses. I don't decide how you take my story. The story goes out and it forms any way it chooses because that's the only light we have in this darkness. I don't know what darkness you have in your life. I don't know what things that you're dealing with in your life, what you need help with in your life. So if I allow my story to go out there and my tale, that's the only one I have to tell. If I allow my tale to go out there, it's the only light somebody's going to have in this darkness. It's the only light that I have in the darkness. It deserves to form any way it chooses. It can form in the life of a child who feels that they are not worthy, because I felt that way, and let them know that they are, because today I know I am. It can form in the life of someone who feels hopeless, and let them know that there is hope. There is hope. We have to allow our story to go when we're at that point where we're going to tell our story and allow it to form in the life of someone who feels disrespected. Whatever story we have, whatever we have felt in life, whatever we have gone through in life, where we feel disrespected, we feel mistreated, we let them know that they don't have to live that way because they can see us. We can let them know that they can have abundant life right now, full of joy right now. We were talking about when we don't understand it and we are unable to have that abundant life and live an abundant life right now. What we start to do is look for it to happen tomorrow. We can have it today. We don't have to wait for tomorrow. We can have it today. When I get to heaven, right now we can have it. You can have that joy. Jesus, he came that we can have life and that more abundant. He made us the head, not the tail. He said, I put before you life and death. You choose. So we choose what we're comfortable choosing. When we choose life, it's not always comfortable. Sometimes it's easy just to lay back on the bed and die. You know, I stepped off of one little step ladder, only one step, little step, and I felt something pulled in my leg, And it was so much easier just to go put that leg up and not move it than it was to actually exercise that muscle. It hurt when I got it, when I started moving that muscle and making it and loosening it up. It hurt. So sometimes it's easier for us not to have abundant life. So we don't do it. Sharing your story can also help to determine your purpose. I didn't know that I was going to be on Facebook Live on Saturday morning. I used to watch Popeye on Saturday morning. I didn't know. But it helps us to determine our purpose. And it also, we began to understand fully who we are. After we have incorporated, when we go back and incorporate all the fragment parts of ourselves, then we can fully understand who we are. Just how strong we are, how powerful we are, how much we are worth, how much we can do. That's when we understand. We begin to understand just how much we can do by understanding how much we have already endured. We began to see our strength. We can then see our own strength. So the last phase, and this one is shorter, it's called phase 5, and this is service. So we have educate, we regulate, we disclose, we share our story. However much you decide you want to share, or any. Then it's service. Oftentimes we see people serve people because that makes them feel good. They feel good to be able to do something. But service is not about feeling better. Service is actually about doing better. I want to do the right thing. I want to do better. When we do better, because it goes like this. When a person is hurt, they hurt other people. When a person is healthy, when I'm talking about healthy in the sense that even mentally healthy, where they're not overwhelmed by their emotions, by fear, by anger. When a person is healthy, they help other people. When a person has been empowered, they empower other people. That goes back to the young lady I told you who will be coming on the line, Miss Leslie Rutland. And she is empowered. You can tell in her conversation. You can tell in what she does. She don't have to put other people down. When you're with people and they got to say negative stuff about other people, that's because they're deflecting. They're not okay with themselves. I try my best to stay out of like laughing at people and stuff. That's deflecting. Empowered people will try to empower other people. And it's all, like I said, one size does not fit all. And it's not a timeline to get to where we're trying to get, because I'm 68 years old. I had to add that up the other day, 68 years old. You can be the one to create those positive ripples in the life of someone else. Service takes us outside of ourselves. It helps us to focus on somebody else. That's what it is. So we want to educate ourselves. We want to regulate. We want to disclose those secrets. Those they want to bring them out, even if they bring them out inside of ourselves. And then our story to be told, and the service that we are going to go forward. We're going to build that next chapter in our life. We can't write chapter 17 without having chapter 2. We're trying to write chapter 17 because we like the way it looked, but chapter 2 didn't look good. When we do that, we're living in an imaginary world, even in and of ourselves. I want to say again to all of you who have joined us, let me make sure that I'm not missing any comments that I want to acknowledge. I want to thank you again, Sister Leanne. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Dr. Whitehead, I appreciate you. Pat, I love you, and I appreciate you for joining this morning. I want to say to Erica, so good to see you. Thank you for joining this morning. And to Danetta, we're glad that you're okay. We talked about Danetta had a surgery. Thank God she's home. And so I'll see her soon, but she's doing well. Thank God for that. We're going to end today with our affirmations for today. We'll be back on next Saturday. I don't actually know yet what we'll be talking about next Saturday, but remember that late May, early June, we will have Leslie Rutland on our live with us, and she's going to be talk about being emotionally mature. Today, our affirmations as following. We honor ourselves by being authentic. We are authentic. We're real. We don't doubt our power nor our value. We are exactly and actually who and what we claim to be. We deserve to live our lives with ease. We do. It may not say we do. Love and tranquility surrounds our interactions and our decisions. We replace hate, anger, agitation with other people with intentional and positive interactions. We allow ourselves to accept positive comments and thoughts about ourselves. That can be hard, especially after trauma. People trying to compliment us, and we turn around and start complimenting them. So people try to bless us, and we turn around and say no, thank you. Let people bless you. Let people show you what they think of you. Stop saying no, no, no. You don't have to do that. Just say thank you. Even if you put it to the side and give it back another day. When my kids, they're not children, give me something, sometimes I put it away. So if they ever come back and need it, it's theirs in the first place. But they don't know, but they being a blessing to me. So I'm learning how to accept positive comments and thoughts about myself. And then when you're not used to it, it's hard to do. It can be hard to do. But just practice. And we are safe places for ourselves. Facebook, family, and friends, I want to thank you so much for joining today. God willing, we will be back on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. I will be posting this video to YouTube. I always get them mixed up. Facebook, YouTube. I will be posting this video to YouTube. And I just want to say thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.